Are you a fan of the Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. Welcome to the show, folks. And I just got to say that only Uncle Mark would headbang with a amiibo from Animal Crossing and a Nintendo Switch controller.
Yes, Tom Nook. You go over here for now.
Is that how they talk in the game, Mark?
Yeah. No actual words.
No, actually, they just it sounds very Nintendo.
It
All right.
is.
So, as you guys might have guessed, I'm joined tonight by your good friend, Uncle Mark.
I hope I'm your good friend. Hey, folks.
Everybody's friend. Everybody's uncle.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't want that uncle.
You don't want
at
that uncle?
Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah.
I don't know.
Sometimes
I think
you'd rather he had stayed home.
I feel like you might be a blast at Thanksgiving dinner, especially if you brought the big green egg and you cooked the turkey on it.
You and a bunch of my scout friends think that that egg is portable, and I hate to tell you, it is totally not. I mean, I could cook the meat and bring the meat.
I didn't really, I mean, this was a completely hypothetical statement, and I didn't really put any consideration into whether the egg was portable or not.
It's not portable.
I kind of don't expect it to be. At least not any more portable than any other grill.
It's actually very, very heavy.
Yeah.
It's basically a big friggin' piece of, ceramic.
Oh,
which
it's
is-
ceramic. That's right. That's not just like,
It's essentially stone.
that's not just
Like, it would be lighter if it was made of metal.
right. Because the metal would be thinner.
Yeah. It's
But
like,
now,
it's like, I think 100 pounds at least.
now it's
heavy.
starting to occur to me why that thing works so damn well. It's the stone. It's the clay or whatever it's made of.
Clay,
ceramic.
yeah.
Well, ceramic is kind of clay.
A moto style.
It's made of clay. Clay that's been fired is ceramic. You're fired! Or, fired in a kiln. Totally different kind of fired. Anyway, so you guys didn't come here to hear me have revelations about what material the big green egg is made out of and how heavy it might be. What you came here for was for the Iron Sysadmin podcast, and we do not intend to disappoint. Tonight, Mark and I have this crazy idea.
Will not disappoint.
Will not disappoint. So I have talked
I hope.
for what is it, a year and a half or 2 years now.
Probably longer than you talked about that damn hex light thing you built.
It's right there, man.
Yeah, I know.
It's right
That's
there.
why I said it.
And it's awesome. I have it in fire mode.
I can see that.
It's
Is
great.
that the mode it goes into when you start the show, or you have to manually set that, or does Home Assist take care of all
I
that?
do have it set in Home Assistant to set the lights and set that to fire mode because, whatever. That's just the mood that I was in when I set it up.
Dementor would be proud.
Indeed. So anyway, I was going to say that for forever, it seems now, we've talked about having a special live stream in off-show hours where we take those Red Hat 5.0 discs that I found in my collection of CDs from when I first got started with Linux and try to install them in a VM live, right? Well, that obviously hasn't happened, mainly because it's really tough to try to organize something like that on a night that's not a show night, along with family obligations and kids sports and work and all kinds of stuff that just get in the way. So we decided we're going to do something similar to that tonight on the show. So I hope you guys enjoy it. We're going to try to make this not a you have to be on the live stream or the video to enjoy this sort of conversation. We're going to
The alcohol will make sure of that.
Right, so we're going to narrate some of it. We're going to try not to depend too much on the screen share that I'm going to show in a moment here. But Mark and I are also going to talk a bit about just kind of where Linux has come since we started, right? And obviously we didn't start at the very beginning.
We didn't start the fire.
When was the first kernel released? When was that epic
funny.
time?
I'm looking that up right now.
I know Linus was on a message forum somewhere, not a message forum, even a news group, wasn't it? Mailing list. And he's like, "Hey, I have this crazy idea where I'm going to try to make a free open source kernel based on Unix, I think it was, or Minix, was it?"
Yeah. I'm actually pulling up his note. Assuming this works.
J Scar's already got it in the chat.
August 25th, 1991.
There we go. So in 1994 was when the first Red Hat Linux release came out, and that's what kind of sparked this. because Mark had shared a link, and that's it. It's going to be in the show notes, to a post from Red Hat just this past, what was it, October 29th, I think is the date on the post.
During We Are Red Hat Week.
During We Are Red Hat Week, which, for those of you who don't know, We Are Red Hat Week is kind of a big deal at Red Hat because it's it's the week of Halloween. Because Halloween is significant for Red Hat. You want to tell them why, Mark?
Well, we like candy and spooky costumes. And
well, that's one reason.
Stuff. But it's also the anniversary of the first commercial release of a Red Hat Linux.
Right. So,
it was called the Halloween release.
Kind of a big deal for Red Hat. So during We Are Red Hat Week, there was this blog post made about the Red Hat 0.9 release, which happened back in 1994. And the author of the post, I guess, had posted about this in 2019. And a bunch of people said, hey, do you still have the ISO? We'd like to see it and poke around with it and try it out, right? And he didn't at the time. And he hunted it down. And for this release, or for this year's We Are Red Hat Week, he got the folks over at the Internet Archive to host it there. Because the Internet Archive loves hosting stuff like that. So Mark had this crazy idea. Why don't we try to install that in a VM during the show and see what happens? Well, I put a little bit of effort into trying to do that, and I couldn't get it to work. I'm sure it's possible, and I'm sure I'm losing some nerd cred by giving up on it. But I just couldn't get it to work. So, and I think it had to do with the architecture that KVM was presenting to the VM. And to be honest, I think if you tinker with the architectures, you can probably get it to work. Or maybe I'm way off. I don't know. But at any rate, what I did do was go to a slightly more modern release, which is Red Hat 5.0. Now, this is not Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5.0.
That wouldn't even be a challenge.
That wouldn't even be a challenge. That's like still running in production, scarily enough, on some people's machines, right? Red Hat 5.0 is the first distro I ever installed. The first Linux distro that's where I started. And like many people, I rabbit trailed to several other distributions, and then I eventually came back to Red Hat because it's the one that I liked the most. And now I work at Red Hat, so, worked out. But for those of you who don't know the why that's significant, why Red Hat 5.0 is significant versus Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5.0 or 5.1 or, whatever that you might be a little more familiar with, Red Hat Linux, that first release, was under the name just Red Hat Linux. And it was just like any other Linux distribution. And if you aren't familiar with what a distribution is, I don't know if we have enough time to really go into all that. But basically, because Linux is free software, you can spin it and re-release it under your own distribution, right? And there was this thing people referred to as the distro wars, because, every software argument has to be called a war, like the browser wars and the OS wars and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, Mark, if I look distracted, it's because the scene in which I'm going to switch to in a moment does not have your video fixed, like I did before the stream started. So I'm fixing that. But anyway, Red Hat was just another distro. And I say that like it's insignificant, just another distro. Well, there was, things like Red Hat Linux, there was Yellow Dog Linux, there was SUSE Linux, and then there were like variants of BSD and all that stuff. But again, we're not going to go too deep into all that. But
Slackware.
But somewhere, was it the, early 2000s or late 90s? I think it was early 2000s. Red Hat decided to sort of enterprise up Red Hat Linux and release it as, Red Hat Advanced Server? Or Red Hat Enterprise Linux Advanced Server?
There was Advanced Server in there.
And then the sort of quote-unquote desktop distro, or the free distro, became Fedora. So then there was this split, where Fedora was sort of one trail you could go down for just free Linux, like everybody intended. And then there was RHEL, or Red Hat Advanced Server, or whatever they were calling it at the time, that you could pay Red Hat, and you would basically get a hardened and enterprise-ready Linux distribution. So that's where Red Hat Enterprise Linux, FOO, like 5.0, comes into play, right? So that's just like the 5th release of the Red Hat Enterprise Linux fork, right? And then Fedora Linux becomes Red Hat Enterprise Linux, every so often, and that's how this whole ecosystem works. I tell you all that to sort of just give you an idea of what we're looking at today, right? So Red Hat Linux, and this is my Red Hat Linux 5 disk, for those of you that are looking at the stream. Looks very similar to, we were just having this discussion before between Mark and I. Mark has a Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or Red Hat Linux 5.1 disk. It looks just like this one, but my 5.1 disk looks different, and it's got this cool, I think this one may be officially from Red Hat Software, where this one says it's from Macmillan Publishing, which is a book, right? So as you might expect, like some Linux distros were released along with books, right? So that must be what happened here. I don't know. I don't know the history there. We have to find some historian at Red Hat to tell us this.
We actually have some folk at Red Hat who would know.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to ask them. We'll have to get them on the show to talk about this.
I'll see what I can do.
We totally got to do that. But anyway, I like the styling on this disc better. I just think it looks cool. But this one I actually got a Red Hat Linux book with, and it came in a box. Unfortunately, I didn't save the box. Mark, however, saved the box. You want to show your box off?
Oh, hey now.
Not that kind of stream.
Yeah. No, so this is the box, and I actually ordered this when I worked at Merck. I actually had a budget to buy stuff, and ordered it. It was in our purchasing system. I forget exactly how that got populated, but I was actually able to order this, and it came with a package that has 2 CDs. The basic Linux, the one CD that actually has Red Hat Linux on it, and the other one that's Linux applications, which has things like Vital Crisp and WordPerfect 7 and Tripwire and DB Maker and a whole bunch of stuff. So
yeah, my applications disk looks just like the OS disk in my case. It's just disk number 2.
And I have no idea if these were actually vetted or fully supported third-party apps that worked with Red Hat, but the disk itself is right here, and you can see friendly Shadow Man ready for you to install them on your computer.
Yep. In fact, did yours come with 2 operating system disks, one of which contained the source, the other one contained the binaries? Because I think that's that disk I just showed you. This is the applications disk that I have, which is actually very similar to the one you just showed off.
There's a disk. There's potentially a disk missing in the middle of this thing, which could have been the sources. I don't know. It says on the back of the box it includes 3 CD-ROMs, but there's only one regular Red Hat disk in here. So I'm thinking that middle disk is probably the one that had the source code.
Yeah, my 5 has 2 disks. They look almost identical. I'm almost positive disk number 2 is just the source, because that's a very Linux thing to do.
Right. Because the GNU public, the GPL, you're obligated to provide the source code. And back when we bought these, this would have been the late 90s. Downloading the source was not always quick or easy. And with boxed Linux distributions, they would often just include the source on a disk, because for the company that was legally obligated to provide the source code, that was probably the cheapest way to do it.
Right, because the other way would require running some sort of a service somewhere where you could go get the source whenever you wanted to, and then of course maintain that that's always available, right? So, or at least reasonably.
Now, what I did toss in the show notes is there's a very easy to read history of various Linux distros article. And the three big distributions that were around right around the time of original Red Hat were, of course, Slackware, SUSE, and Debian.
Right, Slackware. Forgot about Slackware.
And Slackware was actually I think is pretty much the oldest current active distribution. Like there might have been little crappy distributions before Slackware, but they're no longer around. But Slackware actually goes back to 1992.
Nice.
So, right. And Slackware has a bit of a reputation of being difficult for um, newer users because it's super customizable. My actual Linux journey started with Red Hat on my work ThinkPad, and then there was this easier to use Linux that I dallied with a little bit at one point. Was it Mandriva? It was something with an M.
Mandreva. Mandreva?
Mandreva.
Mandrake.
Mandrake. It might have been
Yes.
Mandrake.
Yeah.
But then
Mandrake was a derivative of Red Hat, if I remember correctly.
it might have been. But
Yeah.
the distro that I landed on for the longest time was Slackware
Yeah?
because I really liked rolling my own packages from source code. You download the tarballs, extract the tarballs, run the configuration, pull the other requirements that the configuration, says, "Hey, we're missing this." And then compile it and then install it. And you would basically you felt like, Mondo nerd. So that actually got me kind of addicted to Slackware, which I had running on the ThinkPad 600 for quite a long time.
Yeah?
I also I had a Power Mac that I got from Merck. They didn't need it any longer, and I set that up in my living room as a web-based MP3 player, which was running, I think, Yellow Dog. I actually said to heck with Mac OS on it and installed Yellow Dog Linux.
I didn't know Yellow. That's right. Yellow Dog was the one that would run on
It ran on the Mac.
on PowerPC.
It was pretty tight.
So
So I had speakers hooked up to it. I would open up a web browser on my ThinkPad, go to my access my MP3 jukebox on the Yellow Dog Linux Mac and blast totally legal MP3s that I absolutely did not pirate via LimeWire.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally legal. Like those
In
existed
my
back then.
defense, I spent a lot of time ripping my CDs into MP3s, and I still have a lot of those in my MP3 library. That's on this very phone.
It's
So,
funny how that worked out, and we could go into that at some point too, if we really wanted to. But yeah, that was definitely a thing I did too. I copied a bunch of my MP3s or a bunch of my CDs to MP3 so I could put them onto various devices, and I still have that
and you know what?
library today. Yeah.
I think I can say this hand to heart. Maybe I ripped some CDs using a Macintosh at one point, but most of the stuff I ripped was using Linux. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever ripped a CD on Windows.
Yep. Yep. I think that is true for at least where mine started as well. It's always been easier to do things like that, to copy things like that on Linux because I don't even know why. It is. It just generally is. All right.
Is.
So I've transitioned the stream to something that has a desktop share from actually another machine here on my desktop or on my
Yeah.
desk. And I don't know how readable it is, but I'm going to do my best here.
So it is illegible on my PC that I'm streaming on.
I bet
However, if I turn 90 degrees
And look at the stream.
and look at the Twitch stream, it actually looks pretty okay.
That's pretty
But
cool.
then people are looking at the side of my head.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to spend most of my time pretending that I can see
Pretending you
what's
can
going
see
on.
what I'm talking about. All right.
But mostly I'm
So
going to drink bourbon and make smart ass remarks.
I mean, I'm gonna spend a lot of my time looking over this way too because that's where the machine is. But well, whatever. All right. So what
So-
you guys are looking at on the stream is my it's basically my work machine. It's a Fedora 34 machine running libvirt because that is the virtualization platform that comes out of the box on Fedora. It's the one I have run for so long. I ran enterprise grade virtualization on libvirt before I got into Rev, which is running on libvirt, by the way.
Right.
So
Just
it's
different crap wrapped around it.
it's what I'm most familiar with, right? So that's why I'm using it, right? So It is a very, very
Time out,
flexible.
Nathaniel.
What? Go right ahead.
Okay,
What are we timing out on?
so we can't just declare victory when we install Red Hat Linux 5.
Oh, I've already done that.
That's
I know that works. So we're gonna have
no.
to try to find something interesting to do with it once we get it installed. You're right. So if you want to think on that, feel free.
Oh, I've got. I think I do have something on that.
Okay.
I think what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get Red Hat Linux installed properly, get X working,
Oh my
and
god.
and browse to Red Hat's website.
Dude, we're gonna be here all night if you want to get X working, but we'll try. We'll try. How's that
Browse to
sound?
Red Hat's website.
All right. So what I'm doing here is
What do
in
you think,
the
Jay Scar? Is that doable? Is that reasonable?
yeah, it's probably not reasonable, but we can
Anybody
try.
else in chat?
So what I've got here is the configuration for the virtual
Links
for the
is
VM.
cheating. We need to use a graphical browser.
Links is look, just getting the network up is going to be fun. Okay. All right. So I've got what I've done here to try to make this easier is I've gone with a very simple video driver called just VGA,
Uh-huh. That should work.
and
We don't need fanciness. X and
right.
256 colors is fine. Look, my box says that new DHCP
DHCP.
easily install on Windows NT network.
Oh my God. This is
So
gonna be
getting the
fun.
network working should be fine.
Should be
We
a
just
snap.
need-
Except
need-
here's what you're
yeah.
not thinking about.
I am thinking about it. I just haven't said it yet.
Yeah. So right now in my VM configuration, I'm looking at the options we have for emulated network cards.
You need to find the oldest friggin' card you can find.
We've got E1000, we've got RTL 8139, and VirtIO. I don't think any of these are going to be supported by
Hmm.
Red Hat 5.0.
Hmm.
So normally when I'm emulating an old machine like this, I would try for
Yeah.
an NE2000,
Yeah.
but it's not listed. It isn't here.
Uh,
The RTL 8139 might have a chance. That's a Realtek card. I really don't think it's going to work though, but we can try it.
yeah, okay.
Okay, I've got an IDE disk specified because there's no way I'm going to futz around with SCSI controllers in this thing. I've got the IDE CD-ROM. I'm right now going to connect my... I actually made an image of my Red Hat 5.0 disk. I didn't just go get this from Internet Archive. I'm doing this right. All right, now we're going to tell it to boot. Oh, yes, apply the changes. Now we're going to tell it to boot from the CD-ROM. And we're going to hit the play button. And here it is. So now, I don't know who's installed RHEL lately, but you're going to recognize some of these screens, and that's kind of neat, right? So here we go. Oh, that's the enter button on the wrong keyboard. Here I go.
Oh, no.
I don't know if I just broke something by hitting enter. I hope not.
I see blurry scrolling white text over here, and I'm waiting for the stream to catch up.
So the stream, and this is
Life is but a dream.
this is part of the fun, right? It's right now it's asking me if I have a color monitor or not. Like, what asks you that anymore?
Well, you do.
Yes, I do. So now it's going to go to color, right? And look at this. This is like the same welcome screen you get if you go to install RHEL 8 today.
So, are we able to pick our installation language at this point? And if so, is redneck an option yet?
I don't think I don't think we
that.
can. Well,
that
let's.
was they
well-
use that to test the localization options.
Yeah, we will find out in a moment. All right.
The redneck option.
So if you install RHEL, I think RHEL 8, I know RHEL 7 in text mode, you get this exact same. Maybe not, the wording may be different now, but the same style screen.
My anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hon.
Oh, we can pick a keyboard layout. That's simple enough. We're going to keep that US though. Nope, can't pick a language.
Oh well, that might have been a RHEL thing.
Could be. All right, so we're going to do local CD-ROM, and insert my drive or my disk. There we go. Now it's checking it out.
And you've done this part.
I have done this part, but I'm doing it again. Basically, I'm doing it again so that we can relive the memory. because when it gets to the point where it's formatting the disks, it takes forever.
Touch me, it's so easy to leave. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
We're coming up on the second anniversary of the Cats movie, which was
Oh,
truly
right.
horrific.
Oh, the new Cats movie. Yes, it
The
was
new
truly.
Cats movie. It is
So
brutal.
this is cool. Okay. When I picked up Red Hat 5, I did some reading beforehand, right? And I read a news article, I forget where it was even from, on the internets
Slashdot, probably.
about this great advancement they had made, or that Red Hat software specifically had made by incorporating Disk Druid. Disk Druid is the tool that I get to partition my disk with right now, right? This is brand new, right? So brand new as of 1997 or whatever. Yeah, 1997 right there is the...
That was a big deal.
It was a big deal. It's because the only other option is fdisk, which is a very unuser-friendly partitioning method, right?
Fdisk is like that old guy down at the gas station who has very few words, but he knows his stuff.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Fdisk is a perfectly fine utility if you know what you're doing. There was a point in my sysadmin career that I could walk through fdisk almost blindfolded, right? Because it might even be scriptable. Could you script fdisk? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
But anyway, Disk Druid is graphical, right? Now you can see I've already got partitions laid out on this. I'm going to go ahead and just label them, where to mount. This was back in the days, and I remember the first time I had a 10 gig hard drive, I couldn't get the machine to boot because my boot partition was too large. It was outside of the first so many meg or whatever of the disk, right? So this is when you had to start putting boot in its own partition, which was always been a good practice, but you didn't have to do it until your disks got too large.
What file system are we using?
ext2 or Linux native, as DistroId tells us. And I have no idea what the growable flag does. There's a growable flag here. I don't know if you noticed that.
I think that would just lead to tears.
Probably.
At the time that this came.
In the time frame we're talking about, anything that had to do with disk compression or resizable file systems was a bad idea.
I wouldn't trust it.
All right, so
this also is, I believe, pre-LVM.
It is. This will lay down flat out.
This will be just static. Classic.
Yep. All right. So now let's take HDC6 and give that a / mount point. The other one is swap.
Slash.
Yeah, good old /. And then we're going to hit OK. And it's going to ask us what to format and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to go ahead and format them. But then once we get this running, I don't really want to. Well, we'll talk a bit while it's formatting and stuff. There is a piece at the end of this which is going to bring back so many memories for you, Mark. It did for me.
Oh, boy.
It's another piece that was new for Red Hat 5.0. All right, so this is going to take a while, but we will chat while it's formatting these disks.
Time to break out a Chocodile.
Yeah. All right, so now we get to pick software. And this ISO image is 300 megabytes, 300 megabytes. And these are all the options. We've got things like printer support, the X window system, mail, www, and news tools.
So install the X window system, please.
I am. It's going to be there.
I can't see.
Sorry. Let's see here. Do you remember Real Player?
Yes.
There's a Real Media client and server listed in this box, or in this installation.
Do we want to install
window.
that for old time's sake?
Probably not. Look, I don't know if we're going to even get X working. There's an X Games. We should install X Games because we might be able to play X Bill.
Absolutely. Do it.
Console games.
Do it.
Do that too. X multimedia support.
Games so we can play robots.
Print server. Do you want a cup server on there? Dial-up workstation and networked workstation.
So Put both of those on there because
They're
we
there.
might be able to play some games.
They're there by
Like, I
default.
mean, nerd games. All right.
Nerd games. Okay.
Like, I wonder if we could. We might be able to do something.
All right.
This could be.
So we've got Samba connectivity, SMB support. Like I didn't realize that SMB, that project, the Samba project, was this old. It is. IPX and network connectivity. This is fun. Anonymous FTP. You can install bind right from here. DNS name server, web server. That would probably be Apache. Let's install that. Emacs. We don't need Emacs. Development tools and stuff. All right. Now we're going to go to OK. And it's going to start its stuff. Now, this is where it's going to take a little bit of time because it has to do some formatting. And the formatting took a while when I did this earlier. Right. We're installing Red Hat 5 now. Or formatting file systems to install Red Hat 5 right now. Now, I picked up...
inodes.
What's that?
Painting the inodes.
Painting the inodes. I picked up this distro at a computer show. You remember computer shows back when all of us nerds would get together at a fairground somewhere and walk around and look at software and buy computers and computer components? You may not have been in the area then. You might have still been.
The Trenton Computer Festival was a
Okay.
big deal. That was a computer show that would happen at Trenton State College, which is now the College of New Jersey, I think.
Yeah.
But it used to be called Trenton State College, and they had one of the oldest computer festivals ever since personal computers became a thing. I remember going to one in the 70s, which was the first time I saw the Atari 800 with that game. I think was it Starfire? Or
Okay.
it was like this ridiculously cool hybrid arcade strategy space game on the Atari 800. And obviously all the Apple II stuff was there. And then later on, my friend Jay went to Trenton State for college, and one year of the computer festival, he actually got me and my friend Jack jobs working it for the weekend. It was fun. And that's when I also bought a because I didn't really have enough money to buy a proper graphics card for the old flight simulator stuff on my PC. I bought a Hercules card, which the operating system would think was actually a color graphics card, but it was basically a monochromatic VGA card meant to be used with
I remember the Hercules cards.
Hercules monochrome.
I don't think I ever saw one. I remember seeing them referenced, like when installing games and stuff.
Right. They were a way to use graphics without having to pay for a color monitor or a real color video card.
It's crazy.
When you had no money.
Yeah, right. I had
very little.
Just thinking back to those days, I mean, you're talking some days that are before my time, but thinking back to those early computer gaming days when you were working in DOS and you didn't have an operating system that supported your hardware, each game had to have compatibility for the hardware that you wanted to run on.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, you
set the sound card up separately for each friggin' game.
Right. And it was in the game or in the setup program for the game, right? Where
Absolutely.
you would tell it, here's the DMA and the IRQ for my sound card, and this is the type of card it is, and this is how many bits it can it can process.
DOS literally just got the computer booted.
Yep.
And it was how you loaded other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as a universal wide video driver for DOS stuff. You didn't see that crap until Windows.
Right.
For most people. I mean, OS2, sure, but like 3 people ran OS2.
It's funny, this collection of CDs that I dug my Red Hat 5 disc out of, I have a burned copy of OS2 Warp 3 in there. We should try to install that on the stream, too.
Oh, my God. I tried to run Warp on a 386 that had some hardware issues, because remember the no money thing?
Yeah.
Shortly after I was married, I had a 386 that had some hardware issues. I actually ended up scavenging a lot of hardware from Micro Warehouse, the one company I worked for, and they were okay with that. But I never had like good, consistent hardware until I finally bought a Macintosh Performa using the employee purchase program there.
Oh, believe me, I know the situation you're
That was
talking
kind of
about.
cool having a non-janky computer.
Crazy
So is
stuff,
this
right?
another virtual console on the VM?
Yeah. Well, so this is another. This is the VM I installed earlier. While we're waiting for that to format, I'm just going to
Okay.
basically boot this up to the login prompt, and there we are at localhost. Now, I set this other machine up with the exact same network adapter. Oh, that's the wrong keyboard again. Where did I just type at? I don't even know. Like, what am I messing up by doing that? Apparently nothing. I didn't just put a root password into the stream or something. Doesn't look that way. All right. not
Hopefully it's
not like I have a production root password on this little VM.
God, I would hope not.
You can probably guess what the password is.
Probably
I'll just...
Red Hat
What? No, I wouldn't do that.
or password.
All right. So here we are. Again, the one that we were installing. Let me move my mic here so you guys can hear me better. The one that we were installing is still running in the background, and this is one I installed earlier. It's just like when Rachel Ray puts a cake in the oven and then pulls one out that she started before the show. Same deal. So here we are in Root's home directory, and we've got no network set up just because I wasn't able to get it working. To be honest, I don't even know if I remember how to set up the network interface on a Red Hat 5 box. This is that long ago.
So I'm guessing NMTUI is not a thing.
Well, no, there's no network manager.
There's no network manager. Yeah.
Is there like setup? There is. Ah, wait. Mouse config, system services, sound config, time config, X configurator, file system
how about
config.
we get X working?
Hang on. We can try. So I did, and this is what I want to show you in the other installation when it gets there. I did try. There's this thing. Do you remember during the setup program? There's this thing called Metro X. It was a setup program that would launch at the end of the setup procedure. But anyway, it didn't help because if I try to run X, it pukes and brings me back. With our old friend, the X won't start errors. So let's look at var log X errors and see what it tells us. No such process. That's fine. Let's go back. Go back. Can't connect to X server.
Well, did you do the X configurator in the setup?
Well, I did it during setup. Let's try it here. See what happens.
Yeah, please.
X configurator. What's it gonna give us? This program will create a basic XF86 config file. Okay, let's try this. All right. Choose a card.
Video is all janky.
Oh, it is, isn't it? That's fun. Why did that happen?
I don't know if other people are seeing that. It's almost like the cable was loose.
That made it a little better somehow. I don't know why, but it did.
All right.
All right. Okay. So, that's the fun of doing this stuff live. All right. So we're trying to pick a graphics adapter now.
Is there just like a generic VGA?
That's what I'm looking for. We got Cirrus. Was Cirrus an option in my... I don't remember. Ooh, Diamond. You remember Diamond?
Yeah, I do remember Diamond. Like, just scroll all the way down to the bottom.
I'm going to G. There's your Hercules adapters.
Yeah,
generic VGA compatible. Let's try that.
That's what I would go with.
And that's all it asked me. Nothing else. See what happens. Nope.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. My God. It's not that long ago that I remember doing this on a modern machine. These exact same error logs. Fatal. No server found. No valid modes found. There's no defined dot clock matching 640 by 480.
So it should have made an xconfig file, probably in root's home directory.
Well, no, these didn't it put these in Etsy X11?
It might have.
Well, let's look. Yeah, there's nothing. Well, there's an X defaults. No, that's just like preference stuff.
Wow, this is like a bridge.
Like
when
a bridge.
Company is a major problem.
Oh yeah, right. It's like, hey, we're gonna sit around and listen to
One
people
guy's
type.
typing.
Yeah, one guy's typing, trying to solve problems. All right, so. Oh, Metro X config. There's our Xconfig file.
Oh God, the stanzas. I remember the stanzas.
Yeah, right?
Oh.
Oh, we've got Vim. That's good. I didn't know how old Vim was, or if I had to use Vi on this one. Or VI. I don't know. Am I pronouncing that wrong? Sorry, folks.
I always call it VI. Not V.
It's not V.
No.
It's V.
It's never V.
I hit a button. Shouldn't have. All right.
I wish I could be helpful, but I legitimately can't read anything.
Monitor 0. Generic 640 by 480. Oh my God. The H sync and V sync. Remember having to specify those?
Right, and if you weren't careful, and kids, this is something that will blow your mind.
Yeah.
Remember, we were all using CRT monitors, the ones with the tubes made of glass.
Yeah.
And if you use the wrong settings in your X configuration file and the refresh rate, you could actually melt down the monitor.
Yeah,
Like,
you could actually
try
light
it.
light your monitor on fire. All right, so the other one has finished the software installation, so I wanted to go through the rest of that procedure.
Sure.
So PS2 mouse found, yay. Do you want to emulate two buttons? I think I have a middle button on this. I do, so we're going to say no. So this is Metro X, right? Remember I told you Metro X?
All right.
This copy of Red Hat Linux includes Metro X from Metrolink. It even gives us the phone number for Metrolink. Should we call up Metrolink and tell them we can't get X Windows working?
We might be about to call them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, this is Red Hat's. Is that phone number still active? We should try that.
1-800-52 Stern.
52 Stern. This isn't. It's not this then.
No, that's the Howard Stern show.
Oh, I get it. I didn't think so.
I just trolled Nate, and it went right over his
You
head.
did. I don't listen to the Howard Stern show, man. I haven't in a very long time.
I have not either in a very long time.
All right, so this is asking, do we want to install Metro X on your computer? I wonder if maybe we don't want to, and then we'll have a better time setting up X.
Since it's Lord Farquaaded on the first one, on the first Pi, I would say let's not put the same spice on this Pi.
Metro X is licensed software. Your purchase of Red Hat Linux entitles you to one user license for this software. You may not install and run Metro X on more than one computer. Like anybody didn't do that. Okay, we're going to say no.
Yeah, I'm thinking we'll do... Oh, it's doing the wackiness again.
Oh, it's as soon as we go to the... All I did last time was move the window around, and then it fixed it.
Oh, that's weird.
There you go. I don't know. All right, we're going to find the same generic VGA adapter then.
I think so. What are we emulating? Did the VM say or not really?
Just VGA.
Okay. Super VGA?
Just VGA.
Because remember, there was Super VGA.
Yep.
Maybe that's what the VM is using without telling us.
Generic VGA compatible. Generic VGA. You want me to try to find an SVGA instead?
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, the only generic VGA compatible here does not list SVGA.
Well, keep scrolling down to like S. We're in crazy town now.
Yeah, we are. S3. Remember S3?
No,
You don't remember
not
S3?
very well.
This was before S3
well, the problem
storage.
is, yeah, Amazon's taken over the term.
Yeah. S3 Verge was a graphics adapter that I remember.
I believe you.
Now there's no Super VGA.
No SVGA, huh?
I remember Cirrus being a compatible one. Unsupported VGA compatible?
That would be a YOLO type thing.
Wouldn't it though? And we can always change this after install.
We can.
We're going to try that. And that's
So
it. That's the
not using
only question it
retro.
asks.
Is this a little post-install routine here? Like, did it install more shit?
What's it asking? Monitor setup. What kind of monitor do we want to? Is there like a generic monitor we can specify?
Well, is there one that's like 640 by 480?
Because I guarantee Lenovo laptop display is not going to be
No.
on the list. NEC, oh my gosh. We're going to go with generic, I think.
You kind of have to.
Generic monitor, generic multisync. Oh my god, Gateway 2000 Crystal Scan. That's what I had. I remember this.
Did it have the cow pattern on it?
No, not on the devices they didn't. No, the boxes did. We're going to go with generic monitor and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Screen configuration. Probe. Let's see if it finds us anything that isn't an error. Let me shut down this other VM because, you know, let's conserve resources.
It's not really doing anything anyway.
No, you're right. It's thinking. It's probing. Probing.
Probe.
X configurator will now run the X server you selected. All right, cross your fingers. There was an error executing the server. You should try configuring the video card manually. Oh my god, how much memory do we have? We're going to say, oh my god, the options are 256K up to 8 meg. Could you imagine an 8 meg video card today? I don't think it would even run Windows.
Crazy.
We'll say a meg, I don't know. Which clock chip do we have? None. An error. No, this isn't going to work, Mark. We could spend all night trying to figure this out. It's not going to work. Do you want to set up dial-up networking?
You don't have a modem.
Oh, sorry. This is LAN. This is LAN configuration. Let's say yes.
Did you go through this on the other one?
I did, and it did not work. But they have
Pi?
Intel Ether Express. You think that would be the E1000?
Maybe.
Can't find your device anywhere. Gee, thanks.
Check behind the couch.
Yeah, is it behind the couch?
I think, yeah. The hardware we're emulating just might be too friggin' new.
I think you're probably right. D-Link, NE2000 incompatible, but that's not in the list. Token ring. Should we do some token ring? Ooh, SMC. I used to have SMC cards. Your Express Pro.
Never did token ring. You needed very specific hardware for that.
Yeah, I can't find. I don't even remember how to look for hardware when we're done.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
And it won't even let me select it. And then, all right, we'll go cancel.
So, for those of you who are listening to the recording,
Yeah, this is
we we've managed to install Red Hat Linux 5 it onto the actual disk drive, right? And
yep.
in the one Pi that Rachel Ray cooked earlier, the first VM, full command line, log in as root, you can see stuff, but we've not been able to get X Windows working, nor do we seem to have a compatible network driver. And both, there's a couple of things going on, right? The network might be problematic.
I think it will be.
We, if we were good enough at some of this stuff, we might be able to suss a pretend network connection using some sort of weird ass serial port or something.
Oh, I mean,
But
absolutely, that's an option. We don't have time to
but
do that live on the show.
I've had too much bourbon already because I would need to be at 120% to pull that off.
Right.
The other thing is, we don't really know from a graphics perspective what the compatibility gap is.
Right.
Because what are the options with the graphics?
So the options from a VM standpoint are Bosch, BOCHS. I don't even recognize that. QXL, which is Spice, RAM FB, VGA, and VirtIO.
I don't have a fucking clue what any of those are except Spice and VGA.
Right. VirtIO is the native graphics for
Is that
libvirt.
basically just a pass through? VirtIO?
Kind of.
Kinda.
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 I can't speak to it any more deeply than that. It's like a
Well, what about
virtualized
the
layer.
display? So I see what
Oh
looks
yeah,
like
display.
a display.
Type. Oh, this is for the remote display.
Yeah.
Video. So what I wanted to do was go here and switch this to an E1000. And
Because
then
I think, yeah, getting either the network or X working would be like, a Christmas come miracle.
we're going to see what E1000 does. And nope, not Rui, Root. Root. So the thing is, I don't know how to make it detect network cards now that we've installed it.
Is the setup let you do anything with the network or no?
It doesn't.
Ugh.
X configuration, file system, keyboard, mouse, system services.
Try net and then hit tab complete.
Netstat, netcfg. It errors. No display. It wants X. No config file found. Well, what happened to that? Did we make a config file?
Uh,
All right, we're gonna try X configurator one more time. Go back to that generic VA. It didn't ask us for anything beyond the video card last time, though, did it?
It then wanted us to configure it manually.
Generic VGA compatible. Monitor setup. Yeah, this feels unlikely. No.
Yeah.
All right. So at any rate, we have the OS installed. We've been at this, believe it or not, almost an hour already. So instead of continuing to hammer on the this VM, what have we learned tonight, Mark?
We have learned that under certain conditions, trying to use really old stuff is a world of pain.
It's a world of pain. Now, I'm going to tell you, right? So I bought this distribution of Linux like right around the time I graduated high school, if I remember correctly. And in the
Yes.
summer between graduating high school and I had like a month off before I went to business school, which was where I went to continue my education. I think it was like just over a month that I had available. I spent most of that month trying to get this working, right? And one of
Right.
my friends to this day still jokes with me about how many times in one evening we reinstalled Linux because we had no idea what to do once we were at a command prompt. So every time I wanted to try to reconfigure the graphics or whatever, I had to reinstall it because I didn't know how to get back to the configuration windows because there weren't any. As you can see right now, right? There's no like TUI configuration that works. Everything had to be done in flat text files or command line or whatever, right?
So
So,
this is if we were serious, like serious about getting this working, we'd be doing some digging.
yeah,
There's got to be information we could pull either from really old how-tos. So in the old days before really you had a lot of these mega sites like uh, Stack Overflow and other resources we have today, the Linux community put together like Linux how-tos,
yeah.
which were they weren't YouTube videos, thank God. They were written text instructions that you could read to do common tasks, configuring, setting up, whatever.
I'm trying to
So
remember.
so
Oh, it was the Linux documentation project. Remember that, the
yeah,
LDP?
I remember that.
That's
I
where I
wonder
got
if they're
most of
still
my
around.
info from.
So we would dig into those, but I think what we'd really probably need to do is see if there are groups of nerds doing ancient Linux stuff today.
I don't know where we would find such people, Mark.
Uh, running very old Linux. I'm just going to do a Google search on running very old Linux. We would have to we'd have to dig into this a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. But this has been a fun little experiment. I don't know how it's going to turn out for an audio podcast, folks,
I
but
don't know,
I'm going to
but
try.
however, this leads me to two things, and both of these are already in the show notes. But I did want to touch upon them because they're adjacent to the topic.
Yeah,
The first is the idea that Linux really does belong to everybody. That sounds really corny and really hippie, but it's true. Linux is open, and we all of us are entitled to use free and open source software. So if you want to have your own really crazy Linux adventure, you could actually roll your own Linux distribution. Basically, the idea is you start with a concept and you literally build your Linux distribution from scratch. You use a development system. You set up your development, your build environment, and then you start compiling. You compile the kernel, you compile the dev tools, and you get it to a point where the distro you're building becomes self-sufficient. Then you pivot to that, and you finish building and compiling, and and basically at the end you have your own Linux distribution that you've baked yourself. And if you've done it right, you've got all the files and all the steps in place to repeat it, right? You've got scripts, or you've got uh, stages saved and stuff.
you might call it a build environment.
A build environment, right? That that's something that has always intrigued me a little bit, but not something I've ever done a full bore build my own Linux from scratch. But there's a web page for the Linux from Scratch project, essentially, which is a series of they're basically, books, digital books that um, you would read and follow.
So on that topic, before you go on to the next one, which is an interesting video, the next thing you have linked is the closest thing I've done to building a distro from scratch is building a Linux distro from source, which I did because I wanted to make a change to some of the core configuration, and that was Smoothwall. Are you familiar with Smoothwall? It's an open source firewall application. It's basically an IP tables firewall, but it's a hardened Linux with IP tables on top of it, and a very stripped down install. So you couldn't just go in and recompile a piece. You had to recompile the whole project, and then you'd end up with an ISO at the end that you could install from. I needed an option added to IP tables, which you could build. You could add in at build time, but you couldn't just turn on, right? So that was an interesting experience, is the best way I think I can put it. I did get it done in the end, and it was fun. But starting from scratch, that I've never done, and that does sound quite interesting.
What I have done, I have built my own X Windows environment, my desktop environment from source.
Mm-hmm.
There was a desktop environment called Enlightenment, which
Yep.
I really, really liked. And that was definitely, you pulled down the tarballs, you built it from source,
Yep.
and you had to set everything up.
Yeah.
And it was so customizable that it was like ridiculously cool.
These early Red Hat systems are where I first started tinkering with Enlightenment, because there were. This is going back, folks. If you guys have never touched a Linux distro this old, you really missed out. Or maybe you didn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm scarred because of it, and I'm just remembering it fondly. But when you got X running, it was very minimal. It wasn't
yeah. Sometimes it was literally the actual X cursor on
Yeah.
a gray screen.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have a window manager running
Right.
properly.
Right. And window managers were, and they still are today, right? Most people take it for granted. You installed Ubuntu or Fedora or whatever, and you've got a desktop environment that's already ready to go. You just log in, and there you are at a very friendly desktop in most cases. Well, in these days, it was you ran a window manager on top of it, and technically you still are running a window manager on top of X.
The architecture hasn't changed.
Right. But the one that came out of the box was like, what was it, TWM? And I don't think it even had menus. It was like it brought you into a desktop and a terminal.
Right.
and
and
you would
a lot
you
and
would-
a lot of hardcore nerds, the only reason they ran a window manager was to run multiple terminals at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of the popular applications, like you'd use links to browse the web in text mode.
Right.
You'd read Usenet using oh God, what was the newsreader I used to use all the time? Like
I don't know if I remember.
right? You wouldn't, and for email you'd use Pine
Yep.
or
I remember one of the first things I did after I got X working and I had dial-up networking working, which was a whole other thing, right? Trying to get a dial-up connection and an internet connection over it, was I got Netscape 1.0 downloaded and installed from source because there was no browser, at least not that I could find.
probably links.
Links, yeah, there was links. I'm sure there was links, and maybe on that software disk was Netscape and RPM or something. But yeah,
Now,
Netscape 1.0 I would download and install
think-
from source.
This actually includes this I think claimed to include a web browser. Oh yeah, it includes Netscape Navigator and
There you go.
Netscape Communicator,
Netscape
which was an
Communicator.
email client.
Oh my
This was the
gosh.
days before all email was web-based. Like you actually had a fat email client,
Yep,
or a
yep.
not so fat email.
I would like to think that the folks listening to this show remember those days at least. But yeah, so anyway, what we were saying about Enlightenment was basically once you got a window manager up and running, the options that came out of the box were all very bland, and Enlightenment was just beautiful. And you can still go get that
Oh,
today.
you could do
Um,
crazy stuff with it.
you could do crazy stuff. I spent like days probably trying to figure out how to. That was one of the early things I did was build Enlightenment from source, right? And it's just like
I
following how tos
kind
online.
I kind of want to now build Enlightenment for my Fedora 34 box.
You can. In fact, you might even be able to get RPMs of it. It is a much different project now than it used to be, and it's pretty.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. The other thing I shared is even today, Linux continues. One could argue Linux has taken over the world, but there's still, when you're talking about regular consumer computing, gaming computing, streaming, it's still a very Windows and even Mac centric world.
Yes.
So there's Linus Tech Tips is a pretty popular nerd site.
Yep.
Two of the guys there are doing a challenge where they're trying to use Linux as their daily driver. Now, and as daily driver, I use Linux as my daily driver at Red Hat, but that's easy because it's my IRC client, terminal windows, and web browsers,
Yeah.
right? I don't the amount of actual specific Linux apps I run are minimal. These guys want to do gaming, they want to do streaming, like they do streaming for a living. They want to
Right.
basically see how viable it is to install Linux onto their gaming level hardware,
Yeah.
right?
Now
With
I
all the accelerated graphics and all the fancy sound and all that other stuff. And I linked the first video, and there's some high comedy so far.
I went and watched about the first half of that video before we recorded the show tonight because I saw you link it in there.
Yeah.
And when I saw the title, maybe not the title. The title's a little clickbaity because it's like Linux hates me, right? So of course that's gonna
But it sure
whatever.
seemed
But
that way.
when I got to the point where he described the challenge, I'm like, that's easy. Running, thinking about where we came from, the system we just described and just tried to install, running that as a daily driver was next to impossible unless you threw away all of the computer entertainment of the era.
Well,
You
yeah.
couldn't game on it for anything other than, like time waster clicky games. You
Or
couldn't
the
play
open
like
source
Doom
stuff.
or whatever, things that were popular at the time. You could barely get on the internet, and when you did, the web browsing experience was nowhere near. Well, I shouldn't say that. You could get on the internet. Unix and Linux at the time pretty much ran the internet, but as a client, it was not a good experience, right? Today,
No.
it's almost interchangeable for a certain use case, right? However, the gaming use case isn't it. You can game on Linux, but it's not going to be the same experience that you have in a Windows or Mac environment.
No.
So I do want to watch the rest of that and see how it went for them because he was having quite quite the trouble.
There were some struggles going on.
Yeah.
And the um the reality um the reality is that both of them ran into some really janky situations.
I got as far as the point where he was trying to install Steam, and while he was installing Steam, he somehow broke the entire graphics environment, like the whole GUI environment. It
Oh yeah.
just died. He had trouble
Oh
even
yeah.
getting it to reboot, and then when he did, it got him to a command line, and it was like,
Yeah.
"What did you do?" It looked like it completely removed X.
Yeah, and
Insane.
that was the gaming friendly distro.
Right, that was Pop OS. I know there's one of our viewers, JScar, loves Pop OS.
Yeah. Now I haven't been ballsy enough to use my main gaming rig as a Linux system.
I tell you what, I am curious what would happen. Not only if I tried, like I have run Fedora on the laptop that I do the show on. I've said before on the show that I run Windows on this machine primarily. In fact, I run only Windows on it at the moment because I use Adobe's Creative Suite to do my editing, my video editing and my audio editing for the podcast. And you just can't run them on anything but Mac or Windows. Right now, yes, there's open source alternatives to those things. I'm sorry, but open source video editing, it just isn't where I need it to be. Premiere is like an industry standard for a reason. So I run that for video editing. Audio editing, absolutely, you can do in Audacity. That's a great program. But video editing, I have not found one that I trust enough to do my video. Anyway,
what's the open source one that even runs on Windows?
What? Open source what?
Open source video editor.
Oh, I don't remember.
I want to call it One Shot, but that's not it.
OpenShot, maybe?
I think it is OpenShot.
Okay. But anyway, I am very curious what would happen if you tried to use VR on Linux. I don't know if that's even a thing.
I actually did a little bit of research, and it seems to be a thing.
Yeah.
But even if I can do that, my Premiere gaming is Flight Simulator.
And that's,
yeah.
From Microsoft, Windows only.
Pretty much. I mean, maybe I could try running it on Proton, but I wouldn't count on that working.
Yeah. So I am curious what would happen if I tried to do VR on Linux.
And the performance hit would probably be nutty.
But the real problem is that the machine that I run Windows on, that I do my gaming on, doesn't have enough. It doesn't have a large enough hard drive to really efficiently dual boot and still have enough high-speed storage for both operating systems. So
yeah,
I could probably do it. I could tinker with it, maybe swapping a different hard drive, a different NVMe drive into the laptop and run it on that. But, I don't know. All right, so we've gone on about this for a bit. Again, I don't know how I'm going to edit this into an audio show, but we'll figure that out.
There was a lot of jibber jabber.
But what I think we're going to do, unless you have some final thoughts, I think we're going to go to the break, and then we'll come back with the news. What do you think?
I think that's fine.
All right, folks. So if this does end up being released audio, then be sure to check out the second half of the show if you want to catch the news and our chat and stuff. And we will be back. For those of you on the live stream, we'll be back momentarily.
Yep.
So let me go and switch here, and we'll be back. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. hit the purple button. So that first half of the show, I think, was fun, folks, if you're listening audio only, I don't know what the first half of this show is going to turn out to audio. So you may end up with just the B half as this week's show, but I'm going to give you a quick recap. Mark and I sat down and installed Red Hat 5.0 in a VM on my other machine and streamed it live, and it was a fun little trip down memory lane.
Couple of tears.
We were hoping to try to get a graphics environment up and running and maybe like get to the web or something, but it just didn't happen.
So we also talked some Linux history.
We did talk some Linux history.
There's some good Linux history in there. So
yeah,
my vote, because again at this point I don't know what's going to happen. My vote is you try and keep it, even if there's even if it's not ideal.
My goal is going to be to try to cut it down so that the parts where we were basically talking about what was on the screen in a way that lacked too much context, I'll cut those out, and the rest I'll try to keep as sort of a trip down memory lane there.
You'll lose a couple of my witticisms, but I think you'll
perhaps.
survive.
So I'll do my best, but I can't make any guarantees. If you guys want to see what the first half was all about, go check out the YouTube channel, or for at least a short amount of time, Twitch, and just watch it, because it's really a better experienced visually.
Is it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's not. So at any rate, I will, if I do end up not releasing the audio, I will at least include the show notes from the first half of the show along with this show, so you can go look at the links for what basically spurred the conversation and some of the things that we talked about, because they were, there's some interesting news articles, or not news articles, but articles in there. So, and a YouTube video of Linus Tech Tips doing a Linux Daily Driver Challenge.
It's a fun
video.
But this is really supposed to be about the second half of the show, not a recap of the first half of the show.
It is, but I wanted to give people, something to look back on. So we're gonna move on to the announcements. First of all,
we're always over 2 hours.
You're right. So first of all, our usual patron update. We've got. Well, I'll just read the names off without too much preamble. We got name pending 197, which I don't know how long that name's going to be pending. You'd think it would have been approved by now. Jeremy, Aranami, Andrew, Tatro, Bruce, Robert, Matt, David, Solemn with a 0 and a 3. Trooper-ish, Linux Sys 666, Gimpy B, Mark with a K, D-Mentor, or The Mentor, if you want to look them up on our Discord and say hi. Mark with a... I did that one already. John, the nice guy. Mark with a C, Julius, Andy, Jay, Charles, and good old 22532. If you want to support the show on Patreon, just look us up, patreon.com/IronSysadmin. If you are a patron of the Iron Sysadmin tier, I think it is, for 3 months, you will receive a t-shirt, or so Patreon tells me. We'll see what happens when the first people hit that 3-month mark. What happens? If you'd rather just buy a shirt, you can go to teespring.com/storage/IronSysadmin and buy a shirt, and we get the proceeds. So that's a more direct and immediate way to support the show.
If you're impatient.
And don't want to spend, $45 to get a shirt.
I prefer to think of it as $45 to support some excellent nerd programming.
That's exactly what that $45 is.
Nerd programming. Well...
Yeah, is it excellent?
I don't know.
We hope it's excellent. Do you guys think it's excellent?
I mean, people keep showing up.
If you do think it's excellent, you should leave us a review and let us know. Because there's, once again, no reviews. But we're not at the reviews part of the show yet. We're at the part where I say, B-Sides Delaware is happening right now. Like literally tomorrow morning, the conference starts. If you have not registered, you can probably still do so. Jason is not here tonight because he's busy preparing for the conference tomorrow. So you should go check it out.
When's B-Sides Delaware?
What's that?
When's B-Sides Delaware?
Let me think. It's right on the tip of my brain. Oh, it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow. It's B-Sides tomorrow.
B-Sides tomorrow.
Blah, 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 blah.
And, right, like I said, no new reviews. But whatever. I think that may be the fastest we've gotten through the announcements. Mark, what kind of chat you got going on? What kind of cool things are you doing?
the hell did I write in chat? I don't even remember.
You wrote stuff about some game you're playing.
Right, right. So back at the beginning of the pandemic, life started to really kind of stink for a lot of us. Like right at the beginning, that's when everybody was like locked down. Like
Yep.
you couldn't go anywhere. Like you could walk around your neighborhood and stuff, but like businesses were closed. You couldn't gather, you know, with people or whatever. And Nintendo released the latest Animal Crossing New Horizons on the Switch in March of 2020. Um, I bought a copy of that and then bought a at the same time bought copies for three of my kids. And Animal Crossing, it's crossing. Old people would call it Animal Crossings. Um, that game possibly saved my sanity. I played a lot. And back on November 5th, they released a very significant content update. They basically there was a fair amount of stuff that a lot of the fans wanted that had been in the series prior. Well, they pretty much got, I'm going to say, 95% of the stuff they wanted. And they also released a $25 DLC where you design vacation homes for the animals. And there's actually, normally you can only have a limit of 10 villagers on your main island. There's over 400 animals in Animal Crossing. Like, here's Rossetti. Yeah. Although he's an NPC, but like here's one of my favorite villagers.
Looks like a
Amiibo
mole.
card for him.
Oh.
Avery. He's an eagle.
He's a bird named Avery. Yeah. That's funny.
There's like over 400, like 430, 450, whatever. Every single animal in Animal Crossing can be on the vacation island. You could actually have over 400 homes you've designed for them. It's insane. It's insane.
That is kind of insane.
So
that's a lot of animal vacation homes.
Yeah, I'm up to about a dozen. So, but anyway, so if you were an Animal Crossing fan, I mean, it sold a gajillion copies. There were a lot of articles written about it. There's a whole bunch of people at Red Hat that played, and we've now resurrected the GChat channel for it because
that's pretty cool.
There's new interest in it. But if you had ever heard about Animal Crossing, if you have a Switch, if you were intrigued, well, now is a great time to get in because that 2.0 update, they're calling it the last major free update. So Nintendo considers the game pretty much feature complete now. So
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I'll admit I'm curious about Animal Crossing. I don't think I've ever played an Animal Crossing game. I know you have before this, and that's why you bought this. But my kids, I think, would enjoy it at the very least. I don't get to sit down and play a lot of console games, but they do. And we have a Switch, and they have utterly destroyed my Zelda save. So, which I was making some decent progress on until they got a hold of the Switch. So maybe I could get them to play Animal Crossing and leave Zelda alone.
Maybe. They'd probably get into it because there's lots of cute animals in it.
That's what I was thinking.
A lot of it's about building your own house on the island, about decorating the island. A lot of it's about collecting furniture and other decorations, collecting clothing, collecting recipes to build stuff. And there's lots of options to even do custom designs if you're really creative, like your own graphical patterns on stuff.
That's cool.
I think it would be right, especially probably Kira. I mean, Harper's probably old enough that she'd get it, that she'd be fine. But yeah.
Well, she's the one that's been playing Breath of the Wild, so I think.
But I know that when Kira was here at the picnic in the summer, she had a whole book of drawings and stuff she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it would probably really appeal to her creative side.
Cool. Maybe I'll check it out.
You should. And if you get one copy, they can each have it's one copy per Switch. You get one island per Switch, and you can have up to eight player houses on the island.
Oh, cool.
and then plus the 10 animals. And if they like it, buy the DLC because the DLC is well worth it. Now it's Animal Crossing still the full price game. It's still a $60 game, right?
Yeah.
Um, although, yeah,
I mean,
you might have
Christmas
gotten
is
you
coming.
might have got yeah, and you might have gotten the same Red Hat reward points I got today from a certain mutual friend.
Possibly.
Yeah, so you can afford it. Anyway, but that's what I've been doing. And in fact, I was in New York City last weekend, did our pilgrimage to the Nintendo store on our way to see the Rockettes at Radio City Music Hall, and I treated myself to an Animal Crossing Nintendo controller.
Ooh, very cool.
Yeah. All my PC only gaming friends are throwing up in their mouth a little bit right now. PC Master Race, yo, but too bad.
Now, there's the Switch is a fun console.
It's an excellent console.
I like the portability and the sort of the versatility, like the options you have for the different types of controllers and the way you can use them and stuff. It's pretty neat.
It will be traveling with me this Sunday as my family goes to Disney World. Yeah, I'm taking a little vacation, heading down to the mouse this Sunday.
Cool.
So I'm super excited about that.
We were there 2 years ago now. 2 years? Yeah, 2 years ago
You guys
now.
went November. You got it
2019.
actually is 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
So,
going on your 2 year anniversary.
and after you go this time, you will have been there twice since we were there, which I'm kind of jealous because it was such a
Well,
good time.
I'm at a different stage in my life than you are.
No,
So
no, I get that.
when I had kids your age, like I couldn't I just couldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have enough money for one thing.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I guess not having to support children is a great way to save money.
I have some life goals, right? So didn't make it on Rise of the Resistance last time, but one of the people going is my future son-in-law Lucas, who is a big Star Wars fiend. So we're definitely going to get on that. I've already got an appointment for us to build droids on Wednesday. I'm
Cool.
probably going to do a BB unit.
Cool.
And I gotta get. We're probably gonna hit Universal on Thursday because our park tickets we left Thursday open for either a down day or to do Universal.
Is that where the Harry Potter attractions are?
It is. It is.
We wanted to see that when we were down there, but we had a full week of Disney planned, so there was really no chance to get out and go check out Universal.
Well, we're going Sunday to Sunday, so
Yeah.
we've actually got we're Saturday is a Disney day for us. We're doing Epcot, and then because we're doing Epcot on Monday, Epcot's our favorite park.
Yeah.
And we're doing Epcot again on Saturday, but we have park hopper tickets.
Epcot was pretty awesome for adults. The kids, not so much. But I mean, they
There's
still had
kid-friendly
fun there, but
There's
it wasn't
kid-friendly
it
parts.
wasn't like Magic Kingdom, right? Like they had a blast in Magic Kingdom.
My two favorite parks are probably Epcot and Hollywood.
Yeah.
Magic Kingdom is wonderful. Don't get me wrong, but overall, my two favorites are Epcot and Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah, but like many things, the first trip to Disney was as much fun as it was a learning curve. So I think going again, we would probably do a few things a little differently, and we might have even more fun. But it was a blast. I mean, I would go back in a heartbeat.
And I, of course, need to add to my collection of selfies taken with Disney princesses. And
Well, that's
characters.
important. That's very important.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Cool.
So that's what's going on with me.
With you. So I bought new controllers for the VR setup.
Right, you and I haven't really talked about
We
them.
really haven't, and part of that was because I wanted to give it some time to really see how much I liked them before I gave them any kind of a review. And I'm still not sure if I'm quite ready for that, but I can certainly give first impressions. So I picked up what I had. I'll spare you guys the long story, but basically Mark here gave me his old VR headset, which is a HTC Vive. I don't even know what model it was because there's like 3 models of Vive at this point.
It's the original one. It's not the Pro.
Okay, so I have an original Vive headset, and that's all he gave me, right? So he kept the other
Well,
stuff because he
but
upgraded headset.
it also has the advanced audio
Okay.
strap. So it's
Um,
actually an OG with the audio update. Sorry.
Okay, cool.
This is not. We're not making a long story short, man.
No, we're not. So I had to buy the tracking units, and I had to
Bland.
buy controllers, right? And I just went to eBay, and I got them for like I don't know, $200 for everything, right? Because I wanted to get it going on the cheap and get into it and see really how much I was going to play it. Well, long story short, I've played a ton of VR since then, and I really do. I love it. It's everything I've wanted in gaming since I started gaming. It's just so much
Glad you
more
enjoy it.
fluid.
That makes me feel happy that
Well,
you're.
good. I'm glad. I'm glad that it does. And to be honest, even though you upgraded away from this, you told me when you gave it to me, it's still a fine headset. You just needed better definition for the game that you play, and you're right. Right? I mean, it's still great. Again, I don't want to get too deep. There are certain things I can nitpick, but again, for a free headset, it's really good. So anyway, to the point here is I bought the Vive wands, which are the controllers that came with the Vive, um, because one, you guys might remember what was his name, Josh, that we had on from Paper Cut. We talked about VR a little bit with him, and I told him that I had the headset, and I told him I was going to buy, the Vive setup, and he said, "Don't do that. Buy the Valve Index Knuckles controllers. They're so much better." But I didn't want to spend $300 on controllers when I was just getting into VR, so I bought the Vive wands, and they've been good. The one thing I don't like about them is the hand grip controls, like the squeeze buttons. I don't know what you call those. The grip button. My hands get like stiff when I play enough VR. My knuckles start to hurt just from squeezing them. Right? And maybe it's just the way I play. Maybe I squeeze them too hard. I don't know. Whatever it is, my hands were getting like stiff. So I thought, the Valve Index controllers have finger tracking instead of buttons. They actually have like uh, I'm not even sure what technology it uses, but it's similar to like the radar or lidar that are in cell phones nowadays, so they can actually track your fingers as they move. So there's no more squeezing to activate the squeeze grip, right? And I thought, well, that alone might be enough to be an upgrade for me. And on top of that, they use joysticks instead of the little touch D-pads that the wands use. Supposedly, I think I read somewhere they're supposed to be able to be tracked better by the base stations. Um, but anyway, I bought some, and I'll say that I like them. There've been a handful of things that are just me getting used to the new controllers versus the old ones. I think if I had started with these, they wouldn't be problems, but they're just things like button mappings are different in the game that we play, No Man's Sky. There's a couple things that are different, so I had to figure out how to play some of the pieces of the game that I already thought I knew how to play. Um, but yeah, I'm going to say that for the moment, I'm pretty happy with them. Would I recommend that everybody ditch their HTC Vive wand controllers and spend $300 on these? I don't know. I don't know that it was that big of an improvement. For me, with my specific stiff hand problem, they're an improvement. If you have that problem, maybe you want to look into them. Otherwise, I don't know if they're really all that. I haven't found any like night and day. Everything is so much better now that I've switched. So, if you're thinking about buying a VR setup, I would probably say go ahead and buy these to start with. Don't go to the wands first. But if you've already got the wands, they're not that big of an upgrade. I think that they're really worth spending the money on.
Okay.
So, if any of that resonated with you, Mark, like about the squeeze grips or whatever, or even the joysticks are a nice upgrade. They are easier to control, I think, than the touch D-pads that are on the wands. Um,
Sure.
but again, those two things, is that really worth the money? I don't know. If your wands
So
died, maybe you'd want to spend the money on these instead of wands.
for now, I'm happy with the way the wands work.
Yeah, if you like the wands, I don't think it's really that big of an
Like
upgrade.
I use the VR more than some people do, but it's not like I'm doing VR every day.
Right.
And I'm kind of in a No Man's Sky mode now where I do use the wands, but at some point I want to get back into the flight simulator, which doesn't use those controllers at all. It's keyboard and like the pow the HOTAS and stuff.
Oh, I didn't realize that Flight Sim didn't use those.
No, not at all.
Interesting.
Those you don't even turn them on.
Hmm,
You're just using the headset.
that's cool. Well,
Yeah,
I should
I'll
say
show
interesting.
next time you're here. I'll show you how Flight Simulator works
That's cool.
with the VR stuff. You're the mouse. You end up using the mouse in the cockpit as your hand.
Hmm. How? Wow.
And
Okay. I guess if everything's within reach, that shouldn't be that
yeah,
bad. I.
the mouse is easy. It just you take your hand off the joystick and the mouse is right there
Oh, okay. So you use
on
a.
the
That makes sense. Use a joystick instead of the wand. Now it makes
correct.
sense. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. And then rudder pedals.
Cool. What if you don't have pedals? Do you have to have pedals to play it?
You don't need pedals. I bought the rudder pedals after getting into it. You can program the rudders as a twist on the HOTAS or some other way.
Cool.
But I like the rudder pedals because it's
Well,
authentic.
yeah. I mean, if you're really getting into it, I mean, I've seen people that do. I don't know if it's flight sim or not, but they have like a full on like instrument panel in front of them.
Oh yeah, no, that if I wasn't doing VR, I'd probably have bought some of the fake instrument panels with the switches and stuff
It's pretty crazy.
because that's just cool.
It is
Yeah.
cool. It is cool. All right. So let's see. What else do I have going on? Oh, our mutual new coworker who we were talking about Dresden Files like a month or two ago when she first started.
Yeah.
It got me interested in going through the series again. So probably the third time now I'm going through the audiobooks of the Dresden Files. I
Nice.
started reading the the books because I do have them in ebook form, and that was great. But I go on walks every day, and it's really convenient to just pop in an earbud and listen to 45 minutes of a book while I'm walking. So I went back to the audiobooks just because of that. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel bad for doing audiobooks instead of reading. It makes me feel like I'm less of a nerd for somehow, but but they are good. And I've said this 100 times. Probably every time I talk about the audiobooks, they're narrated by James Marsters, and he does such a great job. I know our other mutual friend does not think so. He didn't like James Marsters as the narrator, but I think he does a great job. So, and the other thing is I started learning how to airbrush with acrylic paint. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but like before this I didn't even own an airbrush, right? So this is brand new, and it's not because I'm getting into art. It's that same doll project that I've talked about on the show
Oh, the
before.
creepy ass
Yeah,
doll.
the ball jointed doll. I started looking into, okay, how do I paint this thing? I finally have it all printed. I've got it all primed. I've got it all sanded so it's good and smooth. Now, how do I paint it so it's not just gray primer, but it's skin, because it's a doll. It's supposed to have skin tones. And then there's a whole other facet of how, okay, now it's got a skin tone. How do I make it look more lifelike? Which means like shading, and eventually, since it's a female doll, it's probably going to have like makeup and stuff on its face. I got no idea how to do that, but I can lay down a base coat of spray paint pretty well. So yeah, I'm learning how to thin acrylic paint, like craft paint, so you can spray it with an airbrush, and down my first coat on one of the pieces of the doll today to see how it's going to work, and it came out pretty nice. I'm pretty proud of it. So yeah, more tales in the weird project that is building a ball jointed doll with a 3D printer.
One day the ball jointed doll will be built.
This at this
Today,
at this point
today is not that
at
day.
this point it's going to be like a year and a half or 2 years to get the first doll put together. Now, admittedly, it's like it took me a couple weeks to get the pieces printed, and then they sat in a box for months probably because think life was just too busy. I didn't have time to deal with it. And then I started the sanding process and the primer, and I got that done in like 2 weeks. And then it sat since then. That's probably a month ago, right? I think I talked about that on the show. Well, now I'm starting to do the skin tone. Once that's done, who knows? Because it's probably going to have to go to my wife to do the touch up, like the actual finish work, because I don't have an eye for the artistic side of this stuff.
Mm.
So I guess we'll see how it goes. And not to mention, right? I got to figure out like how do I put hair on it? I apparently there's ball jointed doll wigs. How do I know what size wig it? I don't know. This is
I
all stuff I
I
need to
don't
figure out
even
next.
want to know.
Yeah, you're like, I know, and I don't know. I don't want to know any more
No, stop!
about ball jointed
Stop!
dolls.
Stop with the ball jointed tile! No! Oh man!
Eyes. It's another thing. It needs eyes. I don't know
Creepy
where to get
ass eyes.
eyes. Yeah.
Creepy ass
So
eyes.
this is quite the interesting project. But yeah, that's what I've got going on this week.
That's great.
You're the one playing Animal Crossing, man. Don't you judge my ball jointed doll.
But the ball jointed doll's like 10 times creepier than anything in Animal Crossing.
You're probably right. All right. I think we're going to go on into the news, which you guys might be happy to hear is not exactly very extensive tonight. So we'll see you on the other side of the purple button. All right, so here we go into the news. Let's see here. The first article I've got, I heard about this on like the news proper. Like I heard this on one of the news podcasts that I listen to in the morning. And this is from Boing Boing. And this apparently is not the most expensive sale of this type, but the title is an Apple One computer, hand built by Jobs and Wozniak, sells for $400,000. $400,000. Now they say that it sold originally for $666.66. I don't know why they chose that price. Maybe you know, being more of an Apple historian than I am. Was it the 666 number that they chose it for, or is it just to be funny? Is it just like we need a number? How's this?
Woz likes repeating numbers.
Is that what it comes down to? Okay.
Yeah, it's not satanic.
He likes repeating
Revelations.
numbers.
Revelations is about Nero anyway, so whatever.
Right.
Now, one thing that's really cool, there is these wooden cased Apple computers.
Yeah.
There's one in the Smithsonian too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they say that I mentioned that this is not the most expensive that one of these is sold for. Apparently, back in 2014, one of them sold for $900,000.
Wow.
Similar Apple One. This one apparently had two owners. It was bought by a professor at Professor at Chaffee College in Rancho Cucamonga, which is like the best word ever, in California. He bought it in 1976, I guess, when these were new, and then sold it.
Yeah.
Well, he said he sold it to a student in 1977.
Okay.
But yeah, it said it was sold for $666.66 in 1976. So that's when the thing was originally sold. I assume that's what they're saying is that's when this guy bought it.
Yeah, and the student paid $650 for it.
He paid so it was already depreciating in price. $16.66.
Now at 400. I'm now looking at the Apple II sitting in the corner of my office, but I somehow don't think I'm going to get the same.
You don't think it'll get 400 grand?
No,
probably not. Apple IIs were a lot more
common
than the Apple One, and I don't think your Apple II was hand built by Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak either.
Unlikely.
I've got. In the basement, I think I talked about this already on the show. I have an eMac. Remember the educational Macs that were sold? It was the iMac, but they were basically a little more.
I used to know every single Macintosh model. I was that was kind of like my jam at one of my first real jobs when I worked at Micro Warehouse. I became like a Mac guru.
Oh. Well, I have an eMac in the basement. A friend of mine was cleaning out his old house because he was going to sell the place. And he was going to throw it in a dumpster. And I'm like, what? Do you want that? Take it. Okay. So it's in my basement. I was going to try to fix it up and make it work. And then I don't know what I'm going to do with it from there. Some people say it might be worth a little money, not 400 grand, probably not even a grand.
No.
But, if I can fix it up and either use it for fun or sell it for a couple $100, I think I'd be happy with that. But
I forget what processor the eMacs had.
I think he told me it was Intel, but I'm not certain.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm gonna someday clean it up. Maybe once the ball jointed doll is done.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought this was a cool article, a nice piece
It
of
is cool.
computing
And it
history.
kind of goes along with old computing,
Yeah.
like old stuff. Like
Yep.
we talked a lot about old computer stuff today.
Yeah, we did.
So I think
did.
that's very appropriate.
So yeah, I'm just looking at the build. Like, it's literally a keyboard stuck inside of a wooden case. Even the feet appear to be wooden.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Why not?
Pretty cool. I wonder. I'm just picturing Steve Wozniak in his garage with a circular saw, cutting.
Did you I don't think was that all right. So I guess they did put it in that wooden case.
That's what it sounds like from the article. It sounds like that's the original case. That's what it came in.
All right.
So anyway, if you have an Apple One sitting around that is collecting dust, and maybe you want 400 grand, maybe you too can make 400 grand selling your...
Did you watch Steve Wozniak when he talked for Red Hat?
I didn't.
Earlier this year.
I didn't get a chance to. I should have, but I didn't.
It was so good.
I'm sure it's recorded somewhere. I hope it's recorded. We'll look it up.
It was really. It was a great session.
Cool. He is an interesting guy. For as much as I didn't necessarily like Steve Jobs, I know he was a visionary and he built Apple Computer, and a lot of people regard him as like the god of Apple. I think Wozniak is
the true god.
So much of a better. He's a better person. Hearing some of the history on the Command Line Heroes podcast, where they talked with him and they talked about some of the stuff he did in the time frame where he was building these computers, he just sounds like he got it so much more than Jobs. And Jobs was just the pretty boy that sold it all, and that frustrates me.
Yeah.
But anyway,
but the Macintosh would not be if it weren't for
the
insanity of Steve Jobs.
You're right. So he served a purpose. It's just that Steve Jobs I equate to Bill Gates, like the same old scuzzy businessman building a financial empire on top of technology.
Pirates of Silicon Valley. You ever watch that movie?
I did a long time ago. I should probably watch it again and refresh my memory. But yeah,
I thought it was pretty well done.
Yeah. And again, you're right. Gates and Jobs, they pioneered this industry. Like it or not, like them or hate them, they did a lot to get this industry where it is today. So without them, maybe you and I wouldn't be here doing a podcast about IT at all, because IT might be different. We might not even have jobs in IT, right? Like the whole thing would be different.
The Apple II was my genesis. So
right.
Yeah, without Jobs, I don't know where I would have been.
Right.
Timing would have been disrupted enough that I would not be a co-host on the Iron Sysadmin. I'm willing to state that unequivocally.
Right. So, anyway, we're going to move along to an article from Motherboard. Robinhood, which apparently it's an investing service, I think.
Thieves.
Yeah, not the Prince of Thieves.
Robinhood, remember when the whole GameStop thing happened?
Yes.
That was the trading platform that shut trading down.
Oh, okay. Now it makes sense.
And irritated a lot of people.
I remember the name Robinhood. I didn't know if that was a person or a service. It was a service.
It was the service, yeah.
Anyway, so Robinhood says it was hacked and extorted, but no one lost any money.
Oh, no.
I'm sure that Robinhood has lost some money over this. So when they say no one, they mean none of their customers, I assume. But so basically, a customer service representative was social engineered, which is essentially tricked, into somehow giving somebody access to one of their internal, customer service systems. Now, they say it was done over the phone, right? So I'm picturing I call up Robinhood customer service and I am a real slick MF and I convince them to give me a username and a password. How does this happen? I would really love to know. And they don't go into a ton of detail here. just that it was over the phone and that it was a customer service person. I would love it if somebody were to somehow get the details about this, because I'd love to see how in the hell you get
I'll bet.
this level of
I'll,
access through a phone on a customer service person.
I'll bet it was a mixture of slickness and intimidation. Probably made the customer service person think that they were like a higher up in the company.
Yeah, could be, could be.
I'm stuck here. I'm not at my computer.
Yeah,
Need your help. Help me, or I'm gonna fire you.
right, right. So
Who knows?
it's interesting, but so basically what they say, there are some numbers thrown around here about how many people were impacted. I had them. So let's see. Gain access to email addresses of more than 5 million customers, the full names of 2 million other customers, and other data from a smaller group of customers. And they say that was like, I thought they threw around the number like 300 for that one. No, we also believe that a more limited number of people, approximately 310 in total, additional personal information, including name, date of birth, zip code, was exposed, and a subset of approximately 10 customers having more extensive account details revealed and added. It doesn't sound like they've told us what the more extensive data was. What I'm really curious about is who those 10 people are. Are they like 10 random unlucky schmoes? Or are they a targeted...
Yeah.
Like, are they people... Are these the people they were after? Right?
I'm gonna guess. That's what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not big into conspiracies and shit.
Right.
But that sure feels like it.
Yeah, it feels like these are people that somehow they knew were customers of Robinhood, and they're
Probably
the ones
whales.
they were coming to get the info on.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe it's just like, I'm poking around in a system, I found this, oh, let's see where this goes, it got me to these 2 million people, where does this go, got me to these 300 people, who are these people, right? And that just happens to be luck, right?
It could be.
But that sure sounds suspicious to me. That sounds like
It's sus.
they were targeted. But
as the kids would say, it's sus.
that is sus, yo. Sus. What's the phrase? Red is sus. So anyway, if you're a Robinhood customer, go change your name and address. No, you can't do that.
Put an arrow in that one.
All right, and this one I ran across really just before we were starting the show, and I only really included it because it's really interesting to me as a content creator. And it's from The Verge. Is The Verge the news outlet you don't like, Mark?
No.
No.
The news outlet I don't like is the Register.
The Register. I knew there was a the in there, right? So that
the Register, the friggin'
that narrows it down.
The friggin' National Enquirer of tech journalism.
Right. So anyway,
Terrible.
The Verge reports that Patreon is well. Here, I'll just read off the headline. Patreon's building a native video hosting for creators to sidestep YouTube. Now, anybody who's dabbled at all in the content creation world and looked into the financials of it, looked into how to get paid for creating content in a freelance way or in a private way, maybe. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Not employed by someone to create content, but just create your own content and get paid for it in some way. Currently, the way to do that is to make content, put it on YouTube, get big enough that you can turn on monetization, which then gets you YouTube AdSense or Google AdSense profits from your video creations. And then, of course, you can monetize in other ways like merchandising and sponsorships and whatever. But
merchandising.
But the particular problem that causes is YouTube is kind of the platform. That's it. Sure, there's things like TikTok and there's things like, you know, Instagram Reels and whatever, but they're not... They serve different use cases. Like for very short form, what do they call it? Micro video or something like that. Content. TikTok is perfect. Instagram Reels is perfect. Facebook's... what's Facebook calling it? Facebook has a similar thing where they do short videos because everyone does. Even YouTube has gotten into the shorts market. But to do longer content, YouTube is kind of it. You can do YouTube or you can go to some place like Vimeo, but you've got to pay to be on Vimeo. They don't pay you. Or you can host yourself. And if you host yourself, good luck. No one sees your content because they don't know how to find it. right? Um, there really aren't that many options in this world. So people are kind of stuck with YouTube, and YouTube has a lot of problems. And one of those being that Google, we've talked about this plenty of times. Google, of course, owns YouTube, and Google has the attention span of an ADD squirrel, right? So no, I don't. I'm not saying they're ever going to just shut down YouTube like they have so many other services, because that one is actually making the money. The problem is that they're letting you quote unquote host your content for free, right? And they make money on your content by showing ads, and then they give you a tiny little piece of that money. I'm going off on a rant here, but the point is
You are.
that
This is like
I this
my level of rant.
I feel a little passionate about this as a content creator, right? Because I would love to be able to produce content for my fans and receive money for that content in a way that is not necessarily funding some multi-billion-dollar organization, right? I have no idea if what Patreon is doing or about to do will fit that need, but it would be awesome if it had content creators in mind instead of lining their own pockets. And Patreon generally is a lot more focused on paying creators than it is on filling their own pockets, right? So I will be happy to see what comes out of this, and that's the whole reason I included this article. It's really light on details because there aren't any details out there yet. It just says that Jack Conte, he's the guy, Conte, is that how you pronounce it? He's the CEO of Patreon, said, like, it's a thing we're going to do. And that's about as far as he's released. So I'm going to pay attention to this, because if it's a place for people like me to host content, maybe even host this podcast, I'll at least consider it, right? So anyway, there you go. YouTube is a terrible place to host your content, but it's the only place to host your content.
Oh boy.
So yeah, Patreon content hosting could be cool. Could be cool.
See what happens, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The challenge always is, how do you find the content, right? Like,
Yeah.
YouTube is, you can get lost in YouTube being referred
Yes.
from video to video to video to video.
And to be honest, my content on YouTube, the most of the views come from people browsing around YouTube, stumbling across my videos. It's not from external searches, even though I share my videos like every freaking where I can think of on social media. The majority of the views don't come from there. They come from browse features, which means someone is clicking around YouTube and they stumble across my video.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard to not depend on that.
Joe Consumer doesn't want to be using a platform that's a minority platform. Joe User wants to go to the platform where everybody is, so that he can see the content everybody else wants to see.
Right.
You know, it's a tough nut to crack. How do you break out of these monolithic platforms?
Yeah, because honestly, the monolithic platforms don't generally have your best interest in mind. They have their best interests in mind. You just happen they make it just attractive enough for you to be there making content, right? And then at any moment they can change the rules. And YouTube did this to us. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago at this point, where they changed the rules about who was allowed to be monetized, and people who were making a living on YouTube all of a sudden
suddenly they weren't.
All of a sudden couldn't make any money on YouTube, or content-wise, right? Another rather famous thing that YouTube changed there's two of them actually. One of them is firearms content. YouTube decided, nope, firearms content is not okay. We're not gonna promote it. You can still put it here, but we're not gonna show it to anybody because we think guns are bad. And then people who had firearms content, completely legit, people that are like marksmanship instructors or instructional or whatever, all of a sudden no one's seeing their videos because YouTube decided we're not going to promote that stuff. And the other is hacking videos, and this one's a lot more close to this podcast. But videos about computer security, YouTube suddenly decided that stuff is, we're not just not going to promote it, we're going to actually start banning videos that we consider quote unquote hacking, illegal hacking. A lot of folks who were doing instructional hacking videos or walkthroughs on CTF challenges or whatever all of a sudden found that their content was not just not being shown to people, it was actually banned from the platform, right?
Yeah,
So, and that's bad. It's bad for content
that's a
creators.
shame. Because when you become a monolithic platform, and this is like the free speech argument, you can either be you don't get to be a publisher anymore. You don't get to edit the content
Right.
that you display outside of like edge cases of like obscene, like
Oh yeah.
illegal content,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
But
there's obviously content that is acceptable, right, and content that contains violence or nudity or like exploitation of
I mean,
children. Like those are all things
right.
that generally people agree probably don't belong on a public platform.
Yeah, yeah. Like we can all agree that child porn is bad. I hope we can all agree
I
child
hope
porn is
so.
bad. That if not, then we have no common ground. But, then you start, one person's violence can be another person's entertainment. One person's sexually explicit content is another person's entertainment. You
Right.
might personally have a problem with it, but as long as it's not breaking the law, that I think you get into real sticky situations. And there's been, you know, Congress has been struggling with this a little bit.
Yep.
A lot of the attention's on Facebook,
Yep.
but YouTube is just as YouTube and Twitter are just as air quote bad.
Yeah.
Once you get to a certain point, you're a utility, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these companies take advantage of laws for that a telecom would be able to take advantage of, or a utility would be able to take advantage of. But you can't get those advantages, but yet be able to play the role of a publisher and censor content that you disagree with because
Right.
the new vice president of content media is exceptionally woke,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and that's a perfect example for things like the firearms content, right? Like these aren't people that are breaking the law. They're
No,
people that are
no.
trying to educate people on proper firearms use or firearms modification or
And
whatever.
shooting's fun. I
It
love
is.
shooting.
It is, right?
I've gone shooting with my scouts a lot. It's my dad always used to take me shooting when I was young. It's there's nothing illegal or immoral about shooting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very
Shooting's
distinct
pretty fun.
line between dangerously wielding a firearm or wielding a firearm in an illegal way and simply recreationally owning and using a firearm, whether that's for hunting or target shooting or home defense, right?
Yep.
Um, and to just like blatantly say, we don't like that content because too many people use guns to hurt other people. Well, that's true. Like it is true. And I don't want to get into a firearms debate, but it's a great example of where you're taking content that is not illegal in any way and you're making it
Right. And
difficult to make that sort of content on your platform and people are being hurt, not physically hurt, but monetarily hurt because of it.
right. And again, these YouTube and Facebook and stuff are saying, well, we're not publishers. They're trying to have the best of both worlds as far as regulation
Right.
and other things. You're either a publisher or you're not. And if you're a publisher, you got to play by a different set of rules than if you're a utility.
Right.
And of course, tech moves so fast that Congress can't keep up with them. Congress is old, stupid white guys that don't get tech
Yeah.
for the most part,
Yep.
and some old, stupid women, let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not
Um,
let's not be gender biased. They're all stupid.
there's plenty of old, stupid people in Congress. And not that they're stupid, but they're like,
No, they're uninformed is what it is. They don't get
they
it's
don't understand. Yeah.
yeah, they
They
don't
don't understand
understand the
technology.
nuances of certain industries. IT is one of them, or technology is one of them.
Whatever. So that's where the hell did this come from? Oh yeah.
I don't know.
So hopefully Patreon's
Patreon.
successful. Patreon is successful. Is that where you would host your stuff at that point?
I don't know. So apparently they already host podcasts, and I didn't know that, and it makes me curious what
Well, that's
that's
kind
all
of a
about.
bad sign
What, that it made me
that you
curious?
didn't know that.
That I didn't know that. That is kind of a bad sign. Well, we didn't read an article about it on the air when that happened. Maybe we should have.
Excuse me.
But anyway, apparently you can already host podcasts with them, so maybe we can learn something from how they host podcasts
Maybe.
that will teach us how they might host video content. Now, if it turns into like only patrons can see your video content, then obviously that's not the way I would want that to work. Although it is a way to get paid for content that people actually want to see, so I don't know.
It's kind of like OnlyFans. Anyway.
It is like OnlyFans. But no porn on OnlyFans. They changed those rules. I don't know. Did they change them back now? I think they changed them back.
Changed them back because they realized that without porn, they got
Yeah,
nothing.
they're like, wait. How many of our users are sexually explicit content? All of them?
Most of them.
What?
The Iron Sysadmin will not be moving to OnlyFans, by the way. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. All right, folks. So this has been fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as we have. Let me get to
maybe
my.
some people do, but I'm not selling myself out for them.
Okay, you're still on that, are you? Now you're dreaming about an OnlyFans. No, let's not go there, Mark. You have a day job. You don't need to.
Well, maybe I just want to become an OnlyFans influencer. I don't know.
There you go. You want to be an OnlyFans influencer. All right. So if you want to watch this train wreck live, folks, you can do so on the second and fourth Thursday of every month. However, I did want to mention the next Thursday of this month happens to fall on the U.S. holiday of Thanksgiving. I'm sorry, folks, but I am not going to record a tryptophan-fueled, sleepy podcast the night of Thanksgiving. We're probably going to skip the second show of this month. So,
okay with that.
so you will not see us the fourth Thursday of November, but we will be back with Ed Scotus
See you in December.
to talk about Holiday Hack. I think it's the first episode in December he's going to be on to talk about
Ed
Holiday
Scotus,
Hack,
man.
as he is every year. He actually reached out to me this year. I actually felt almost like proud for a minute, because instead of me having to reach out to him, he just wrote me. He's like, hey,
And Ed,
we do this thing every year. Come on, we're going to do it again. Yes, let's do it again.
and Ed Scotus is a super fun guy to have on.
He is. He's a great guy. So look forward to him being on again. Probably the next time we record, because like I said, Thanksgiving. I'm not doing a show on Thanksgiving. Maybe
Coward.
we'll release an old show. Just like TV sitcoms would do sometimes. They would just re-air an old show on a week when they didn't have a new show to show. We're gonna do that.
Yeah, but we don't have to do that because people can just
You're right.
go and look at the show whenever they want.
You're
This
right.
isn't broadcast TV.
I'm joking, Mark.
Good
It's
Lord.
not. It's a joke. I would not do that to our listeners.
I mean, I get where you're coming from.
Or would I?
Yeah, he might.
Anyway, so, right, if you want to talk to us, you can do so on the Discord community. I haven't hit that button the whole show. Is this it?
Discord.
There it is.
Nice.
You can reach out on our community and chat with us. It's a pretty active community, folks. People are there. People are chatting. We just had someone asking about some help with Ansible earlier today. So come on in. It's not just to talk about how much you love me and Uncle Mark. You can actually talk to other IT people. Right, and if you want to watch us live, YouTube and Twitch, just look up the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. You can find us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. It's the Iron Sysadmin Podcast, in case you didn't guess. And if you want to support us, you can do so on Patreon, where maybe you'll someday find all of our content. Patreon.com/IronSysAdmin. And I think that's a show for tonight. You got any final closing words there, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that
He's
we're
speechless.
not going to be on OnlyFans.
We're not going to be
But,
on
you know.
OnlyFans. We're not.
Okay.
We're not. No, we'll make a version of the logo that's not wearing any clothing, and that'll be on.
There you go.
That'll be on OnlyFans.
No, this is a fun night today. Everybody have a fantastic Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little sad we weren't able to get X working, but what can you do?
Maybe next time. We'll
Yeah.
totally we'll do a follow-up show. We'll get X working. I'm sure everyone would love that.
I might fuss with it. I might fuss with it a bit myself on one of my lab machines and see what I can do.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say it was actually relatively easy to get the RHEL 5 stuff or Red Hat 5 stuff to boot in KVM. It's really wasn't that hard at all. The
I think I even have the. I think you gave me the ISO, or
the
I have the ISO from somewhere.
the 0.9 release, I couldn't even get the boot disk to boot. Like it would try to boot, and it would get me that broken Lilo prompt.
Lee.
The Lee prompt.
Lee.
Anybody who ran Linux of this particular age will recognize that, and they will immediately they'll immediately get that pit in their stomach when they see LI and no LO.
We're so screwed. It's doing Lee. All right.
Yeah. All right, folks. It's time to stop. Folks, we will catch you on the next show when Ed SCOTUS is on. So everybody, have a great month till then.
Peace.